Cycling pavement markings. 1. Bicycle lanes. These on-road painted lanes are intended to provide cyclists with a defined space and help organize the flow of traffic. They're also a visual sign to motorists that cyclists have a right to the road. Motor vehicles can occupy space on both sides of the bike lane and are able to cross the lane at any time. Most bike lanes are located to the left of the parking lane and as such require motorists to cross the bike lane when entering or leaving a parking spot. Motorists also must cross the bike lane when turning at an intersection, lane or driveway. Motorists need to be alert for cyclists already in the lane, in particular at intersections. Cyclists are not limited to the use of a bike lane when it's provided. While the bike lane offers a defined space for cyclists, there are times when they may have to leave the bike lane in order to change lanes, make a turn or leave the roadway. Motorists should always be aware of cyclists on the road and note that the solid line on each side of the lane does not mean the cyclist cannot leave the bike lane. Pavement markings. White lane lines and a diamond symbol with a bicycle designate a bicycle lane. 2. Sharrows. Sharrows are pavement markings painted on a roadway to encourage cyclists and motorists to share the road. They're generally intended for use on roadways with lanes that are wide enough for side-by-side bicycle and vehicle operation. However, motorists should always pass cyclists at a safe distance and should not assume that the sharrow indicates that they can pass within the travel lane. Depending on the positioning of the cyclist, it may be necessary to change lanes in order to pass safely. Sharrows don't designate a bicycle lane and should not be treated as such. While some cyclists will ride down the center of the arrow, in many locations, the sharrow marking simply indicates cyclists and motorists are to share the lane and is not an indication of where a cyclist rides within the lane. Pavement markings. A chevron and bicycle symbol designate a sharrow lane. Starting out. Steering, hand position. Most vehicles are equipped with power steering and adjustable steering wheels that make operating the vehicle easier and more comfortable for the driver. It's recommended that the steering wheel be held with your hands at the 9 o'clock and 3 o'clock positions. This will allow for good control in the event of a collision, and the vehicle is equipped with an airbag. It will inflate without injuring or being obstructed by the driver's arms. The driver of a vehicle should never turn the steering wheel with one hand palming the wheel, or with one finger, as they may not have full control of the vehicle. Accelerator. To set a vehicle in motion, you have to accelerate smoothly and gradually to avoid jerking the vehicle. The driver's foot should lie flat on the accelerator with the heel on the floor. For optimal engine performance, the driver should avoid abruptly applying and releasing the accelerator. Drivers should accelerate slowly and steadily when starting from a stop. By doing this, drivers have more control over the vehicle. If the vehicle is over-accelerated, particularly on poor or slippery road surfaces, the wheels can lose traction, which could cause loss of control. Automatic transmission. Many vehicles have transmissions that change gears automatically in response to speed and acceleration, by means of the mechanical, electrical or hydraulic controls. Drivers of such vehicles can also shift down to a lower gear for increased braking power when descending a hill. Downshifting prevents the transmission from automatically changing into a higher gear, keeping the vehicle speed slower. This can be very helpful in keeping the vehicle's brakes cooler, as they will not have to be used as often when descending a steep hill. This is an example of how the gears on an automatic transmission could be used. 1. P. Park, for starting the engine, stopping for an extended length of time and parking. 2. N. Neutral, for starting the engine, disengages the engine from the drive wheels. 3. R. Reverse, for backing up, bring the vehicle to a complete stop before changing from a forward gear to reverse and vice versa. 4. D. Drive, or 2 to 5. for normal forward driving conditions. 5. 2-3 halves 4 lower gears for driving with heavy loads. 6. 2 for driving on slippery surfaces or up or down steep inclines. 7. 1 for driving very slowly when off the highway. Manual, standard transmission. Shifting gears in a vehicle equipped with a manual transmission is a skill which requires considerable practice. The driver operates a clutch pedal with the left foot while manually selecting the desired gear range by moving a gear shift lever with the right hand. The clutch is used to make or break the connection between the vehicle's engine and its transmission. When the pedal is up, the connection is engaged and the power of the engine can then be transmitted to the drive wheels of the vehicle. When the clutch pedal is pressed down, the connection is disengaged, which prevents the transfer of engine power. It's while the connection is disengaged that the driver will change gears. As the driver begins to let up on the clutch pedal, the re-establishment of the connection will be felt before the pedal is fully released. The point where this first occurs is called the friction point. It's at this friction point that the driver must coordinate the further release of the clutch pedal with the use of the gas pedal to achieve a smooth shift and prevent engine stalling. Shifting patterns vary as do the number of available gears. Your owner's manual will describe the shifting pattern for your vehicle. With the ignition switch in the off position, you can practice moving the gear shift lever into its various positions until you're sure of the locations and can find each gear without looking. When starting the engine of a vehicle equipped with a manual transmission, your selector lever should be in the neutral position and your clutch pedal should be fully depressed. When driving manual transmission vehicles, it's important to select the proper gear so your engine neither lugs moves the vehicle in rough, bumpy fashion, nor races, revs the engine but does not move the car effectively. If the engine begins lugging, you must shift to a lower gear. If it starts to race, a higher gear range must be selected. Your owner's manual will provide you with the approximate speeds at which you should shift. Once you have the vehicle in motion and have completed shifting gears, be sure to remove your foot from the clutch pedal. Leaving your foot on the clutch pedal unnecessarily is called riding the clutch and can cause excessive clutch wear. When you're required to brake or come to a stop, you should avoid depressing the clutch too soon to avoid coasting to your stop. When turning corners, be sure that your vehicle is in the proper gear for the speed at which you're turning. Clutch. The clutch makes it possible to disengage the transmission and the engine. By pressing the clutch pedal, the connection is broken between these two components, allowing the driver to change gears. The clutch pedal must be pressed with the left foot and held to move the gear lever. Avoid releasing the clutch too quickly. This can damage components, leaving the vehicle inoperable. Also, don't let the clutch out too slowly or release it out only enough to hold the vehicle from rolling on a hill when stopped. This will cause the clutch to heat excessively and wear out prematurely. Driver's Handbook. Chapter 4, Starting, Lane Changing, Curves and Turning. 1. All chapters. Before starting out from a parked position on a street, the driver must first turn on the signal furthest from the curb or use the appropriate hand signal and then shoulder check before moving. This warns drivers about to turn into that lane that the parked car intends to move from a parked position. These cars have sometimes been struck by other cars whose drivers were surprised by the parked car suddenly moving. Driver's Handbook. Chapter 5, Starting, Lane Changing, Curves and Turning. 1. All chapters. Greater than 2. Chapter 5. Lane Changing. In this chapter, before changing lanes, check your rear view mirror for traffic and signal your intention to move to the right or left. Check blind spots by shoulder checking before changing lanes. Move into another lane only when safe. When changing across multiple lanes, it's acceptable to make one shoulder check and signal to change over a number of lanes at one time, as long as the movement can be completed safely. If you must use mirrors only to check to the side and rear, unable to shoulder check, you can only change one lane at a time. Remember: 1. Never change lanes at intersections. 2. Signals and checks are required before moving away from a straight line, such as when maneuvering past parked vehicles.
Before changing lanes, check your rearview mirror for traffic and signal your intention to move to the right or left. Check blind spots by shoulder checking before changing lanes. Move into another lane only when safe. When changing across multiple lanes, it is acceptable to make one shoulder check and signal to change over a number of lanes at one time, as long as the movement can be completed safely. If you're unable to shoulder check and can only use mirrors to check to the side and rear, you can only change one lane at a time. Remember, never change lanes at intersections. Signals and checks are required before moving away from a straight line, such as when maneuvering past parked vehicles. Let's review your blind spots. With the inside rear view mirror, you can only see A. With your side view mirror, you can only see B. When you check both mirrors and shoulder check, you can see A, B, and C. If your vehicle signals don't work, use these hand signals. To turn left, extend your left arm out. To turn right, bend your left arm upwards at 90 degrees. To stop, bend your left arm downward at 90 degrees.
Driver's Handbook. Chapter 5. Starting, Lane Changing, Curve. 1. Slow down before entering a curve and avoid braking in the curve. 2. If you do enter a curve too fast, don't jam on the brakes. Instead, apply them carefully to keep control. 3. When entering a left-hand curve, steer toward, but not over, the center of the road. 4. When entering a right-hand curve, steer toward the right side of the road. 5. Beware of drivers who may have strayed into part of your lane. 6. Decide well in advance where you are going to turn and move into the appropriate lane, following the correct lane change rules. 7. Once you are in the proper lane, signal at least 30 meters before the turn. Outside cities, towns, or villages, signal at least 150 meters before turning. 8. For cars with manual transmissions, shift to the proper gear before turning. Driver's Handbook. Chapter 5. Starting, Lane Changing, Curves and Turning. 1. General Rules of Turning. 1. Decide well in advance where you are going to turn and move into the appropriate lane, following the correct lane change rules. 2. Once you are in the proper lane, signal at least 30 meters before the turn. Outside cities, towns, or villages, signal at least 150 meters before turning. 3. For cars with manual transmissions, shift to the proper gear before turning. Right turns. In this chapter, Right turns must be made from the right lane nearest the curb into the right lane nearest the curb of the other road, unless it's blocked within 30 meters of the intersection. In that case, you can turn into the next lane nearest the right if no other traffic is approaching in that lane, such as a vehicle coming from the opposite direction also turning onto that street. Before making a right turn, watch and yield the right-of-way to pedestrians crossing the street. Making right turns correctly. Making right turns in towns and villages. Some communities have a white line on the right side of the road. The area to the right of this line is the shoulder of the road. Stay to the left of the white line to make your turn, refer to Figure A. Extra caution should be taken when turning right as there may be someone driving illegally on the shoulder. On wide roads without white lines on the right side, keep well over to the right if you are turning right, refer to Figure B. Making right turns on highways in high-speed areas. On highways outside towns and villages, solid white pavement markings identify the edge of the road, and the area to the right of this line is identified as the shoulder. The shoulder may be gravel or pavement. Don't drive on shoulders as they're intended as a safe place for stopped or disabled vehicles. A careful driver, however, should make a reasonable effort to get off the travel lanes as quickly as possible when turning right while being followed by high-speed through vehicles.
Turn right from the right lane closest to the curb into the right lane closest to the curb of the other road. If the right lane of the other road is blocked within 30 meters of the intersection, turn into the next lane nearest the right if no other traffic is approaching in that lane, such as a vehicle coming from the opposite direction also turning onto that street. Some communities have a white line on the right side of the road. The area to the right of this line is the shoulder. Stay to the left of the white line to make your right turn. Take extra caution when turning right, as there may be someone driving illegally on the shoulder. On wide roads without white lines on the right side, keep well over to the right if you are turning right. On highways outside towns and villages, solid white pavement markings identify the edge of the road, and the area to the right of this line is identified as the shoulder. The shoulder may be gravel or pavement. Do not drive on shoulders, as they're intended as a safe place for stopped or disabled vehicles. Make a reasonable effort to get off the travel lanes as quickly as possible when turning right while being followed by high-speed vehicles.
Left turns. In this chapter, left turns are more dangerous than right turns because of oncoming traffic. Different types of streets require different left turn procedures. Only make a left turn when it's legal and safe. When approaching the intersection, check for signs that may prohibit or restrict turns. Before making a left turn, enter the proper lane well before the intersection. When approaching the intersection, signal for the turn and watch for 1. Pedestrians at the crosswalk. 2. Traffic coming from your left and right. 3. Any vehicles established in or blocking the intersection. 4. Traffic approaching from the opposite direction. Never enter any intersection. 1. If it's not safe to do so. 2. If you will not be able to clear the intersection because traffic is backed up in the lane you wish to enter. 3. If the intersection is blocked. Making left turns on a green light. If you have stopped at a red light when the light turns green, you must move into the intersection if it's safe. Before moving ahead, you must check 1. For pedestrians crossing in front of you. 2. For traffic coming from left and right, watch for vehicles attempting to race the amber light. If you are approaching an intersection and the light is green, you must check 1. To make sure the intersection is clear. 2. That it's safe for you to enter. 3. That the light is still green. When it's safe, move ahead to just before the center of the intersection and just to the right of the directional oncoming line. Once established in the intersection, you may clear the intersection when it's safe and if 1. There's no pedestrian traffic crossing the lanes you wish to turn into. 2. There's a break in traffic big enough to complete your turn safely without interfering with oncoming vehicles. 3. No other vehicles are approaching. If the light turns yellow or red while you are established in the intersection, watch for traffic slowing down to stop and complete your turn when it's safe. Always be alert to drivers attempting to race an amber light. If you are not already established in the intersection, you must not attempt the left turn when the light changes from green. Making left turns from two-way onto another two-way street. 1. Well ahead of the turn, look for any following vehicles, signal and move close to the center line. 2. Slow down and look both ways before starting turn. 3. Enter the intersection to the right of the directional dividing line. 4. Make your turn to the left of the center of the intersection. 5. If turning onto a 4-lane highway outside a city, town or village, move to the right after completing the turn, if traffic permits. Making left turns when 2 lanes can turn. Complete this turn the same as any other turn except when 2 lanes are allowed to turn left at the same time. The vehicle closest to the median must complete the turn and stay in the lane closest to the median on the street being turned onto. The vehicle second from the median must turn into the second lane from the median on the street being turned onto. When turning with vehicles beside you that are also turning, watch for vehicles that may not stay in their own lane and be prepared to avoid them. Making left turns from a street with a stop sign onto a street with a boulevard. 1. Make a complete stop. 2. Check traffic and when there's no traffic coming from the left or traffic turning in front of you and it's safe, proceed. If traffic is approaching from the right, establish your vehicle in the intersection. 3. Complete your turn when it's safe to the left of the center of the intersection in the boulevard area. Making left turns from one way onto another one-way street. 1. To make a left turn, the driver should, when safe, move into the left lane closest to the left curb. 2. Slow down and begin your left turn after checking for traffic. 3. Turn into the lane closest to the left curb unless blocked within 30 meters of the intersection. 4. Unless otherwise indicated, you may turn left from a one-way street to a one-way street on a red traffic light. After stopping and yielding the right-of-way to pedestrians and other traffic. Making left turns from one-way onto two-way street. 1. Signal well ahead of the turn and, when safe, move into the left lane closest to the left curb. 2. Slow down and begin the left turn from a point as close as possible to the left curb or edge of the roadway. 3. When entering the two-way street, turn into the lane immediately to the right of the center line. Making left turns from two-way onto one-way street. 1. Signal and, when safe, move into the lane next to the center line in preparation for the turn. 2. Slow down before entering the intersection, check for traffic ahead and to the right and, when safe, begin the turn. 3. Turn from the lane next to the center line into the lane nearest the left curb unless it's blocked within 30 meters of the intersection. Making left turns onto driveways and lanes. To make a left turn onto a driveway or back lane, signal and move into the proper lane before turning left.
To turn left at a green light, first establish yourself in the intersection. Keep your wheels straight until you start to turn. This prevents your vehicle from being pushed into oncoming traffic if you are hit from behind. You may turn left when it's safe and if there's no pedestrian traffic crossing the lanes you wish to turn into, and there's a break in oncoming traffic big enough to turn safely without interfering with oncoming vehicles. If the light turns yellow or red while you're established in the intersection, watch for traffic slowing down to stop and complete your turn when it's safe. Always be alert to drivers attempting to race a yellow light. If you're not already established in the intersection when the light turns yellow, do not attempt the left turn. Well ahead of the turn, look for any following vehicles, signal, and move close to the center line. Slow down and look both ways before starting to turn. Enter the intersection to the right of the center line. When turning, stay left of the center of the intersection. If you're turning onto a 4-lane highway, move to the right lane after turning when traffic permits. When vehicles in 2 lanes are allowed to turn left at the same time, the vehicle closest to the center line must stay in the lane closest to the center line on the street being turned onto. The vehicle on the right must turn into the second lane from the center on the street being turned onto. When turning with vehicles beside you that are also turning, watch for vehicles that may not stay in their own lane, and be prepared to avoid them by staggering your vehicle with theirs. Make a complete stop. When there's no traffic coming from the left or turning in front of you and it's safe, proceed. If traffic is approaching from the right, establish your vehicle in the intersection. Turn when it's safe to the left of the center of the intersection. Signal and move into the lane closest to the left curb. Slow down and begin your left turn after checking for traffic. Turn into the left lane unless it's blocked within 30 meters of the intersection. Unless otherwise indicated, you may turn left from a one-way street to a one-way street on a red traffic light after stopping and yielding the right-of-way to pedestrians and other traffic. Signal and move into the lane closest to the left curb. Slow down and begin the left turn from a point as close as possible to the left curb or edge of the roadway. When entering the two-way street, turn into the lane immediately to the right of the center line. Signal and, when safe, move into the lane next to the center line. Slow down before entering the intersection. Check for traffic ahead and to the right, and when safe, begin the turn. Turn into the lane nearest the left curb, unless it's blocked within 30 meters of the intersection. To make a left turn onto a driveway or back lane, signal and move into the left lane before turning left. To make a left turn onto a driveway or back lane, signal and move into the left lane before turning left. Although it may be legal to make a U-turn, we don't recommend it unless it's at an intersection controlled by a U-turn traffic signal. Instead, in cities, you should go around the block to change directions. In rural areas, continue ahead until you can turn onto a side road, from which you can then make a regular turn onto the highway in the desired direction. With higher speeds on highways, it's extremely dangerous to make a U-turn. U-turns are prohibited at curves, hills where there's not at least 150 meters of clear view of oncoming traffic, places where a sign prohibits U-turns, when approaching a roundabout, you will see a roundabout sign. Reduce your speed to the posted speed limit or slower, and be prepared to yield to pedestrians or cyclists and vehicles in the roundabout. When no traffic is approaching from the left, you may proceed into the roundabout. When on the roundabout, you have the right of way over vehicles entering. Continue until you reach the street you wish to exit, signaling your intentions to exit before you reach the street you wish to exit onto. As you exit, watch for pedestrians within the pedestrian crosswalk and yield the right of way to pedestrians and cyclists.
Driver's Handbook. Chapter 6, Driving. In this chapter, a safe speed allows you to stop safely in emergency situations. Unless otherwise posted, the maximum speed limit is 90 km per hour in rural areas and 50 km per hour in urban areas. Poor driving conditions will require you to drive more slowly. At no time should you exceed the posted maximum speed limit. Driving safely can also mean not driving too slowly. You should not drive at such a slow speed that you hold back or block the normal and reasonable flow of traffic. Driver's Handbook. Chapter 6, Driving Responsibly. 1. All chapters greater than 2. Chapter 6. Following safely. In this chapter, you are responsible for maintaining a safe following distance, one which provides you with sufficient time to stop in an emergency. Use a 4-second following distance when following under ideal driving conditions. Allow more time under adverse conditions. Calculating safe following distance. 1. The rear of the vehicle ahead has just passed the sign you have decided to use as your marker. Begin counting. 2. Count 1001, 1002, 1003. 3. Count 1004, 4 seconds. If it takes less than 4 seconds for the front of your vehicle to reach the marker, you are too close. 4 seconds is correct. The safety factor is even greater if it takes more than 4 seconds. If you are being followed too closely, slow down gradually to give the driver behind you time to react. This can reduce your chances of being struck from behind should you need to stop. Passing. In this chapter, care must be taken when passing because it's extremely difficult to judge the speed of approaching vehicles. You might think you have plenty of time and distance to pass. But don't forget you are closing the gap between you and the approaching vehicle at twice your own rate of speed, and sometimes by more than that. On highways, beware of vehicles parked on the opposite side, as they may suddenly pull out onto the highway. It's illegal to exceed the speed limit when passing. The basic steps for passing are: 1. Check ahead for oncoming vehicles. 2. Check your side and rear view mirrors for vehicles approaching from behind. 3. Signal. 4. Check the blind spot on your left for vehicles beside you. 5. Check again that the road is clear before passing. Once the vehicle you have passed is visible in your rear view mirror, check your blind spot on the right, signal to the right and return to the proper lane. When being passed, slow down and move as close as possible to the right side of the road. Drivers must be aware of wind turbulence caused by passing semi-trailer trucks or other large motor vehicles. You must never pass. 1. By driving off the road, e.g. on the shoulder. 2. Where a vehicle is slowing or has stopped to yield the right-of-way to a pedestrian or other vehicle. 3. In a school area within 15 minutes of the opening or closing of morning and afternoon classes, or while children are near a school or playground. 4. On the left side of the road if it's not sufficiently clear ahead. 5. Where highway construction is taking place. Passing on the right is permitted only. 1. When overtaking a vehicle making a left turn. 2. On one-way streets. 3. On streets with marked lanes.